This Max Cushion Daily Trainer was built to rival the likes of the Hoka Clifton, Brooks Ghost Max, and much more, but there's something special about it that might set it apart from the rest of the pack. Meet the 361 Eleos. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Now today we're going to be talking about the 361 or 361 degrees Eleos, which is a Max Cushion Daily Trainer. If it's your first time here though to one of my reviews, you may notice that there's some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to different sections of the review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate it if you came back and watched the full video when you get a second, as I put a lot of time and effort into these videos. Now before we get into the intended use of the shoe, I do want to go over some quick disclaimers and disclosures, which are that I was given this shoe for free for the purpose of review by 361. That being said, I'm not being paid for this review, nor was I asked to make any specific content. No one watches these videos beforehand, and all thoughts are entirely my own. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the intended use of this shoe. The Eleos is a Max Cushion Daily Trainer, as I said, and so it really is designed for kind of more of those easy miles and recovery miles, maybe the occasional long run depending on your preference. From a pricing standpoint, this shoe comes in at a very nice $145, which is actually cheap for the Max Cushion Daily Trainer category, but not necessarily cheap for the standard Daily Trainer or even lightweight Daily Trainer category. I do feel like it is priced appropriately, at least within the market where its competitors sit. From a specs perspective, this shoe comes in at 9.9 ounces, which is a little bit heavy, but is not overly heavy for a Max Cushion Daily Trainer. Pretty typical for Max Cushion shoes to be kind of in that high 9, 10, even sometimes in the 11 or more range. From a stack height perspective, we're working with 36 millimeters in the heel and 30 in the forefoot for a 6 millimeter heel to toe drop. So right in that kind of middle zone, similar to, again, the Hoka Clifton, which is a big comparison for this shoe, and we'll talk more about kind of other options. But for the most part, that mid zone is going to be comfortable for the majority of runners. Now talking about the fit, I do believe the shoe fits true to size, but it does fit fairly accommodating overall. I would say that wide-footed runners may be able to wear this shoe without having to get a wide version, depending on how wide your feet are, obviously. And I will say that it has a wide overall toe box. So for those of you who do like a wider toe box and want some room to breathe, then this shoe is definitely going to satisfy those needs. Now moving on to the upper, this is actually a yarn, or really just kind of a yarn constructed mesh, with about 25% of the upper being recycled. As with most Max Cushion shoes, the shoe does have some plush throughout the shoe. I will say I don't find it to be quite as overwhelming as a lot of other Max Cushion shoes out there, so I would say you have a like medium to high cushion tongue, and then you have some nice cushion kind of in the heel, but overall the shoe is not like gonna suffocate you. It's not like you're wearing a pillow over top of your foot. Now the yarn knit upper is categorized as a breathable upper, but personally I did find that the shoe ran a little bit warm. I used it during the summer in some summer miles in the heat, and my feet would get a little bit sweaty, but again, for a Max Cushion shoe, that's going to be pretty typical, and I do think that this is a little bit less warm than some of the other options on the market today. Although the upper is accommodating, the tongue is fully gusseted, which allows for some really nice mid-foot lockdown, and the heel has some nice cushioning there, which keeps your heel locked in place even without the use of a runner's knot. So from a lockdown perspective, I feel like the shoe does a really good job. So it has a somewhat more accommodating, a little bit wider fit without it feeling overly sloppy or anything like that, which can be a concern when you get a little extra space. I feel like the upper is just pretty generic. It's not something to really like write home about, but it really gets the job done, and it is very comfortable, very plush. Now moving to the midsole, this is where some of the magic of this shoe happens. The foam used underfoot is called Primo foam, which is actually an EVA and PEBA blend from my understanding. Now the only other shoe that I'm aware of that has an EVA and PEBA blend is the Rebel V4 from New Balance, and if you've been watching my reviews, you know that that is one of my favorite shoes of 2024. What's really interesting about that kind of blend and this Primo foam is you get a lot of squish, but it still provides some good structure for the shoe. The other thing that 361 did is they gave it a fairly wide base, and you can see that the shoe kind of flares out a little bit. And so even though this foam can be really bouncy, really responsive, it's still very stable underfoot. Now I think my favorite thing about this shoe is is because the foam does squish, although it is structured, you can go and really handle your easy miles and feel very, very comfortable, but you're gonna get kind of this subtle bounce or energy return that's gonna continually happen in the shoe. With the Rebel V4 and how the midsole was structured, it was hard to run easy because it's almost kind of a narrow shoe, it's a little unstable, versus with the Eleos, because of that width, you're able to actually settle into easy paces and just get a little bit of that like relief on your legs and just kind of have some of that forward propulsion. The other thing is when you do put force into the shoe, so think like pickups, strides, even repeats if you really want to take them on that, you can go pretty fast, pretty effortlessly in this shoe. It's not set up like a lot of other Max Cushion shoes. Remember, there's only 36 millimeters of foam in the heel, where most Max Cushion shoes nowadays are trying to push that 40 mark. So it is a little bit closer to the ground, and so it feels like it just bounces a lot better, and there's a lot more pace versatility in this shoe than most Max Cushion shoes. Now, don't get it twisted, this is not a shoe that is designed for interval workouts. Like, it is still very much a Max Cushion shoe, but it really does get the job done. It's very comfortable, and you know, I don't love doing strides when I'm wearing most Max Cushion shoes, and that's not a concern at all for this shoe itself.
Now moving to the outsole, 361 uses a high abrasion rubber underneath. Really, that's just a fancy way of saying like a durable rubber. And for the most part, the shoe has held up really, really well, and it does well even on some slightly slicker roads. But as I'm looking at the shoe and just looking for like different wear points, I am seeing the tread kind of being worked down quite a bit in some different areas. And so the grip is good, it gets the job done, but I will say that I do expect it to kind of get eaten away the more and more you run. I only have probably 40-ish miles on this shoe, so to already have some wearing kind of in the heel there is slightly concerning. But you can see that the rubber is actually fairly thick, so it's gonna take a while to really eat away at that. And I would say that you're probably gonna get a good solid 300-400 miles in these shoes. I do wonder how that PIBA EVA blend is gonna hold up over time, because PIBA tends to deteriorate a little faster. But when you mix it with PIBA, you may get some extra life out of that shoe. But yeah, for the most part, the rubber does the job. You're gonna be okay in this shoe, and it's placed in those nice strategic areas, as well as has this kind of middle cutout here, which actually aids in stability. Now, who's this shoe for? Honestly, I think this is an excellent shoe candidate for someone who wants to just have one shoe in their rotation, whether it's due to budget or just wanting to be a little bit more of a minimalist in the amount of gear that they have. While it's not going to be your go-to shoe for interval workouts, because of the stability, because of the comfort and the softness, as well as the responsiveness in the foam, you really can do more in this shoe than a lot of others on the market, especially for a Max Cushion shoe. The shoe should feel comfortable for your long runs, and that responsiveness is going to feel okay kind of in those moderate zones as well. I think the only place you may feel like you're suffering a little bit, and more because of the weight and the geometry of the shoe, less so because of the responsiveness, is again in those really sharp, faster paces. If you're going to do like a track session, probably not the shoe for you. Now, I think visually this shoe is not going to be like the sexiest shoe in the world. It's not one that really looks like great on your feet for casual use. I think there are a lot better looking running shoes out there, so it's not going to be like your Clifton replacement for the whole Hoka girly casual use, but it's very comfortable to walk in, so you could still use it that way if you so choose. But really, I just think that this is a really good candidate of a shoe for someone who needs a little bit more versatility or use out of a single pair. The shoe is probably not for you if you like a little bit firmer feel underfoot despite having a Max Cushion, because this foam is very squishy, it is very bouncy, and so, you know, if you don't like that bounce sensation, not going to be the right shoe for you. And with that, let's just dive into comparisons. You know, thinking of other Max Cushion shoes on the market, the Saucony Triumph 22, this is going to be bouncier, but a similar feel overall between the two. The difference is the Saucony Triumph 22 is going to be higher drop overall, and I believe it is slightly higher stack as well. From a comparison standpoint, I think that this shoe is more like the Hoka Skyflow as opposed to the Hoka Clifton, even though 361 actually in their marketing materials did say that the Eleos is a Clifton competitor. I just didn't know. I don't think they had like intel on the Skyflow yet when they put those together. So the reason why I say this is because the Skyflow has a supercritical EVA foam underfoot, which is a little bit squishier and bouncier than traditional EVA. So this is going to be more responsive, bouncier than the Clifton, and in my opinion, a good amount softer. Now, just on foot, without even running though, the Eleos feels more plush, feels more squish, feels softer. And so usually with plush and squish, you don't expect it to rebound quite as much. That's not the case here. So I do think that the Eleos is going to be a more responsive shoe. It tends to propel you forward a little bit better than the Skyflow. But if you like this idea of a max cushion shoe that can go a little bit fast, these are two really good options. Both, I believe, are 6mm. The Skyflow may be 5, but all in all, kind of a solid comparison here. Another shoe that Eleos in particular has said that it's comparable to is the Ghost Max 2 from Brooks. And I see why. Again, they really are just kind of picking out the like max cushion counterparts of other brands. And yes, like Brooks Ghost Max 2 is a true like max cushion shoe. I do think that this is bouncier versus this is more like shock absorbent, if that makes sense. And so if you like the Ghost Max 2, but you wish that there was a middle ground between like the Ghost Max 2 and Ghost Max 1, with the Ghost Max 1 actually being fairly responsive, like it pops off the ground pretty good, the Eleos kind of sits in between those two sensations. So you know, I don't feel like these are true competitors because this is more of your traditional max cushion shoe. This is more of a competitor in my mind to like the Triumph 22 with Power Run PB, to the Hoka Skyflow like we looked at. The other shoe that maybe we want to consider a competitor, the Brooks Glycerin Max. This is significantly higher stack than the Eleos, but the overall feeling is like a max cushion shoe that also has responsiveness, that also has bounce. So I think that different sensations overall, and I need to get more miles in the Glycerin Max before I really form my opinions, but for the most part, like Eleos 361, I don't know if they were trying to make a more responsive max cushion shoe, but that's what they've done. And that's kind of the trend you're probably seeing in some of the comparisons here. So just some final thoughts on the 361 Eleos, which I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I don't know if they call themselves 361 or 361 degrees. I'm just saying 361 because it's shorter, but the Eleos is an awesome max cushion daily trainer with a little bit more pace versatility than your traditional max cushion trainer. It's built a little bit more in the vein of kind of the new age max cushion, where you're still going to get some bounce, you're still going to get some pop in the shoe, but you're going to get all of that protection underfoot. Personally, I wish that it was a slightly better looking shoe, and I don't mean better for like casual use, but it looks a little bit bland. I would have loved to see a little bit more sporty look, and I know that 361 is capable of that because they've put together some really cool shoes, and they have some coming that I'm really hoping to be able to test as well towards the end of the year and then early into 2025. But for the most part, I'm happy with this shoe and very impressed. It's the first time I've tried 361, and so if you're looking for a max cushion daily trainer that can go fast, that's going to be plush, that's going to be bouncy, this is your shoe. I know a lot of people aren't going to give 361 a chance because I believe it is a Chinese brand, but let me tell you, the Chinese brands are coming. This is the second shoe this year that I've reviewed from a Chinese brand. The other one based out of Hong Kong is the Mountain to Coast R1, and I'm going to TRE at the end of the year, or the running event at the end of the year, and there's going to be a lot of Chinese brands there. So running is a global sport. It's not going to be exclusive to the US, so I highly encourage you guys to check out some of these brands, especially because they do have a lot of really affordable and cool options out there. So with that, we'll wrap the review up. Let me know if you guys have any questions, obviously, about the shoe in the comments. If you haven't already, please go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And as always, I'm going to leave you guys with a question, which is, have you tried any foreign brands when it comes to running shoes? And if so, which ones are they? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.